It's hard to follow up an intro like that, but I'll do my best. Suffice to say, I've developed a knack for getting myself into trouble. I think that covers it. So the talk tonight is a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's surprisingly accurate. Nukes and asteroids. And collision at the Nevada test site, well, not literally an asteroid has run into a nuke, but there are a number of connections here. So this is what the talk tonight's going to look like. And the obligatory about me stuff. So why am I standing here? My background's actually I started in astrophysics, believe it or not. And I discovered a couple of years in it was too hands-off. I didn't want to lie stuck behind the computer screen. I wanted to be collecting the data that other astrophysicists would be analyzing. So I switched over to geology, got interested in planetary, ended up doing things like pointing telescopes, like Joe mentioned, at Jupiter's moon, Io, as it was erupting, doing glaciology, things like that, hands-on. I went back, I jumped into industry because I wanted to get my boots dirty. I didn't want to stay in academia for most of my life. People get stuck there. So I'm in the midst of a master's in space studies, and as Joe mentioned, I stumbled into TV land, which was a happy accident. I like to jokingly say my misadventures in TV land, but it's given me an opportunity to try and do things like this. And that's how this happened, was one thing led to another, and suddenly I'm involved in public projects. So I'm happy to try and bring some of these interesting, truly interesting things that places like the Nevada test site have to offer that are not well promoted, beyond the bomb, out to you guys. So the real reason I'm here is I spent 5 years basically in the DOE complex working out the Nevada test site, and one of the things I did, I ran a lab out there, but I also ran what they call the demarcation program, which is literally keeping track of all of the contaminated spots on the test site, which is the size of Rhode Island. The subject, of course, is the museum. And in doing that, got up close and personal with some of the things I'm going to talk to you about tonight. Secondly, in 2014, I joined a local aerospace company called Bigelow Aerospace, and where I currently work as a crew system scientist. And Bigelow was awarded early this year a trade study contract to support contemplated NASA asteroid missions. So you can start to see the why I'm here in Nukes meets Asteroids. Now, why are we giving this talk here today at all? I would like to welcome everybody to the inaugural Asteroid Day. This is a global day. There is a foundation, asteroidday.org, which they defined a movement, and there's a reason that Asteroid Day is today, which I'll get to later. But the function of Asteroid Day, they call it a global awareness movement where people come together to learn about asteroids, and really, I added what we can and should be doing about them. Now, it may sound pretty far-fetched, it may sound like sci-fi, but one of the things I'm going to try and convince you of here is that it's not. It's real, and it intersects with the Nevada test site right here, just 70 miles outside of town. So the list of companies supporting this isn't like a fly by the seat of your pants initiative. Bill Nye, everyone from their obviously Smithsonian affiliates are getting involved. Discovery Science, Astronomy Magazine, and Planetary Society. These are all the organizations that are supporting Asteroid Day. So hopefully this becomes a recurring thing. And really, what I think is that there's a lot of verbiage that goes along with Asteroid Day, but the punchline comes from a Larry Niven quote. Larry Niven is a famous sci-fi author, a buddy of Arthur C. Clarke, and there's a lot of exchange between the two, and he summed it up pretty well. He once said, the dinosaurs went extinct because they didn't have a space program, and if we don't have a space program, we'll go extinct too, and it'll serve us right. We have evidence that these things happen, and so we should be doing something about it. I look at it like we're wandering through a jungle, and we see another animal get eaten by a tiger, and then we just keep going. It's like, there are no more tigers, right? It's fine. So that is the wrong approach, asteroidday.org would argue, and I personally agree with it. Now, to clarify for people, what is an asteroid? If we're boiling away all the fine details, it's a space rock, and it's left over from an early period in the solar system. Most of them are actually derived from a planet that got well on its way to forming, and then ran into something, was smashed, and distributed in bits across the solar system. And then all the big planets like Jupiter and Saturn started shepherding all the bits around, so that now most of them are gone. But when we say most in the context of space, which is very vast, that means there's still quite a few of these things floating around. Now, I wanted to take a moment to say that with a title like Asteroids and Nukes, some of you might be expecting a talk about half-brained schemes to intercept an asteroid and blow it up with a nuke and save humanity. Well, this is not that talk. But while one of the issues, of course, recent research came out and said if Bruce Willis were to have actually achieved what he set out to achieve as depicted in the movie, he would need 1 billion Tsar Bomba nukes. So the largest nuke ever made by humanity was made in Russia, and it was called the Tsar Bomba, the King Bomb, and you would need 1 billion of them to adequately blow up that asteroid and save Earth. So it's not particularly viable as depicted, but as it turns out, there is a more subtle and more intriguing connection to the Nevada test site and nukes that I want to illuminate for you guys today. So first, it's a little convincing. Why worry about asteroids? I mean, I don't expect you to take my word for it, so let me show you. Current estimates, there's actually, on average, 100 tons of small meteors or space dust that hit the planet Earth, or the planet Earth hits it, every day. So that's about 7 Volkswagen Beetles per hour. So that's something you can wrap your head around. That's a lot of material that's exchanging, it's hitting us, it's adding to our planet every day, every hour. So, and that's average. Most of it, you never notice. Some of it is big enough, about 16th of an inch, that'll light up when it hits the atmosphere. It's going real fast, and that'll be a little shooting star. Now, while most of this is dust, some of it, a small fraction of it, is a lot bigger, much bigger. And how do we know this? So the real deal on asteroids, the one that gets the most attention is what they call the Chicxulub impact structure, right here off the Yucatan. And while the crater, it is a crater, while the crater is not visible like this today, the way we know it's there is it basically, think of it like, you know how the Oregon Trail, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, where the wagons went over and over and over and over the dirt. To this day, you can still see the 2-track because the soil got compressed and then plants don't grow there anymore. A similar thing happened here where there was an impact that was so big, it was an asteroid 6 miles wide, which is huge, but you know, it's not the size of the moon or anything. But it left a crater 100 miles wide. And we know that because the ground is so compressed here in the Yucatan. There's a series of sinkholes that follow this perfect rim. And then boats went across the ocean here and found that the sea sediments are compressed, forming this perfect circle. And the timing of that impact just happens to line up with the asteroids, and this was the early 90s, and this is when the idea that asteroids killed the dinosaurs really got traction. So in the intervening years, it's been validated, and so we know now this at least contributed in a big way to wiping out the dinosaurs. That was 65 million years ago, so you know, why worry now? So are the big impacts rare? That's the question. Or are they common? The answer is they're more common than we would like them to be. So if you do the math, you end up with about 2 civilization-obliterating collisions here on Earth every billion years. Doesn't sound that bad. We've been here around 4.5 billion years, but the timing is also an issue, and this is just an average. So let me show you what we did see recently. So we've only turned our eyes up to the sky in recent years. We started with Galileo, but it's only gotten good in the late 20th century and then now. In 1994, there's a famous asteroid essentially got ripped apart, and bits, like a series of cannon shots, slammed into Jupiter one after another. And this is to scale. Jupiter is very large, Earth is this big, and the explosion from one of these asteroid fragments was the size of Earth. It would have completely eliminated the planet. Fortunately, Jupiter's like the big burly brother. It's got a big gravity field and it sweeps stuff up and saves us from a lot of the big dogs. But we watched this with our eyes. So it's no longer like a hypothetical, we reconstructed something, forgot the dinosaurs. It's like, wow, look what happened on the next block over. That would have completely evaporated Earth. Okay. Well, and as it turns out, we watched another one of these happen, again in 2002, I think it was. But, okay, again, those are still admittedly rare. We've seen them, it's alarming, but do we really need to worry? Well, what about smaller impacts here on Earth? Well, the smaller they are, the more frequent it is. So somewhere between we get hit with 6 Volkswagen Beetles every day, and a couple times every billion years we get a giant impact, it's the middle ground we really need to be worried about. Fairly frequently, big enough to make us take notice. So zoom forward in time a little bit from the dinosaurs, actually quite a bit of time. Only 50,000 years ago. There's a famous crater, everyone calls it Meteor Crater. Scientists call it Barringer Crater, after the man who first proposed, this is fairly recent, that this was not volcanic, it was caused by an asteroid. This happened in the latter half of the 20th century, in the 70s, I think. And so, the asteroid was only 160 feet wide. That's it. And it almost knocked a crater in Arizona that's a mile wide. So imagine if this were downtown somewhere. It wouldn't make someone happy. Okay, again, do we know that this is common enough to worry about? Well, what about modern times? So that's definitely prehistoric. What does, when we started picking up records, tell us? Still, yes, they happen in modern history. The best one, sorry, there's a little offset on the screen. It's called the Tunguska Blast in 1908. And we've recently gotten conclusive evidence geologically that it was caused by an asteroid or a comet, which is similar in this case, impact. It came in so hot that it basically blew up in midair and parts never hit the ground. But the explosion was like hundreds of nuclear bombs, and it leveled entire states, in our case, worth of forest. So we have these pictures, and we now know what the culprit was. So, okay, that's 1908. It's not, it's a little more than 100 years ago, but it's still enough to start to get your attention, because the population has gone up quite a bit. We've got a foothold on more of the Earth than we did in 1908. So the real wake-up call happened in, typo. So 2013, sorry about that. February 13, 2013, a town called Chelyabinsk, Russia. This is an actual photograph of a dash cam, I think a police officer. And this is an enormous, they call it a bolide, a flaming asteroid, a meteoroid on its way in the atmosphere. And what happened, here's Chelyabinsk, here's Russia, there's Mongolia, Europe's over this way, here's Germany, so you can orient yourself. This thing came in from the north. It was only 60 feet wide. I want you to keep that in mind. It entered over the Ural Mountains, which run right here, and it had a clip of about 10 miles per second, which is pretty common for the speeds that things are running around the sun out in the solar system. And what happened was spectacular, to put it mildly, horrifying to the people in Chelyabinsk. It began to burn up 28 miles up. So it's 150,000 foot altitude. It traveled, again, nearly 10 miles a sec. When it burned, it hit with so much friction, 30 times brighter than the sun at its brightest. What I want to show you, I put together a short, which I have to bounce out a PowerPoint here for a second, but a short video that shows a couple of the best examples. This is real footage. There it's showing up. This is not doctored at all. It starts to light up 10 miles a second, 30 times brighter than the sun at max. If you look over here, there it goes. Still a huge chunk of it at 10 miles per second. Minutes later, sort of like a tsunami when the wave comes out, people came outside to look at this amazing contrast. And then, we didn't hear about this much in the States. It was so high up, nobody could have imagined there was a